Coming up next, the main event for the IBF Middleweight Championship. James Toney on the left, the champion. Mike McCallum on the right, the challenger. It's next on Tuesday Night Fight. The King of Beers presents USA's Tuesday Night Fights. It's been called the best middleweight battle since Hagler versus Hearns. It happened on December 13th in Atlantic City. James Toney against Mike McCallum for the IBF Middleweight Championship, previously seen only by pay-per-view. Tonight we bring you one of the great fights in many years. And Sean O'Grady, going into the fight, Mike McCallum, a two-time world champion, but the challenger on this particular evening was a 5-2 favorite over the champion James Toney.
Well, he was the favorite because many people know about Mike McCallum. He's already a proven fighter. You mentioned a two-time world champion. He is a good fighter. James Toney, they still have a lot of questions about. Now, they know he can punch because he knocked out Michael Nunn. But other than that, what else do they know about him? This is going to be really a proving fight for James Toney.
You think he should have been, McCallum, a 5-2 favorite? Or
yes. Yes. Now, early in his career, James Toney, even though we didn't know how he would perform in a world title fight, you know, people didn't know anything about him. He was a good boxer. Well, we knew that. But we knew that he had a little bit of power because he's in that middleweight division. But this is a time for him to really come out. We have seen an example, Al, so many times of how a championship certainly change a fighter, and James Toney is certainly that way.
All right, let's go back to that night, December 13th in Atlantic City. James Toney going up against Mike McCallum. Here's how they looked on the tail of the tape. James Toney at 5'11.5". Mike McCallum 5'11.5". Toney with the weight advantage, but McCallum with the slight reach advantage. And you know the cagey McCallum will use that slight reach advantage. The IBF rules, 3 knockdown rule, not in effect. Standing 8 count, not in effect. Cannot be saved by the bell. And the scoring on the 10-point must system. We're ready to go, so we go back to that night in Atlantic City.
You gentlemen were given your instructions at the weigh-in. You must obey my commands at all times and respect the bell at all times. Are there any questions? Touch him up. Put your hands out. We don't go unless we touch him. Touch him up, Jimmy.
The intimidation game in the middle of the ring. James Toney says that he will walk right through Mike McCallum, the reigning IBF middleweight champion, putting that on the line against the former two-time world champ Mike McCallum, who says, I've seen it all, and this cocky upstart cannot intimidate me. First round scheduled for 12. And Sean, what do you expect right here at the outset?
You know, this is a different James Toney than we've seen in the past. He is starting off this opening round, and look at the battle back and forth of these two world-class fighters trying to take the play away from the other. They're both starting off with that so important left jab to control the match. Oh, and there's a low blow by Mike McCallum. That wasn't all McCallum's fault, though. James Toney was moving in a little bit too close, and he got nailed.
And he understood that, touches gloves with McCallum. Toney, a very aggressive fighter, search and destroy, and he knows he's going up against one of the best technicians in the fight game, the 35-year-old McCallum. And there are some who wonder if he may not be a few years older than 35. Toney at the age of just 24 and has really come on in the pro fight game. He started as a pro in October of 1988, and in his first 2 years, 24 months, he already had 23 fights. McCallum turned pro back in 1981. A matter of fact, since the time that Toney turned pro in 88 and has had 29 fights, McCallum since that point has only had 9. Halfway through round number 1, and it is McCallum using his boxing skills The head feints, the body feints, keeping that jab very busy, trying to confuse Toney early.
You talked about the search and destroy style of Toney. Toney has not always been that way, though, Al. He was before a good boxer. Now he realizes he's not only a good boxer with the Michael Nunn fight and this championship, the confidence that brings you, he realizes he, too, has the punch.
Toney with a combination, looking to go upstairs, while Mike McCallum, living up to his nickname, the body snatcher, tries to take away the body first, and he's going downstairs at Toney. McCallum, Sean, just kind of looking for openings, try to get in with a flurry and then get out.
Well, you know, this is a championship world-class fight. Both of these two don't want to let this fight get away from them. They want to control, and what they're both trying to do is steal with that left jab. They're trying to counter their opponent's left jab and make him quit jabbing. Take the play away from him. Very smart for both of these fighters to do, for any fighter. The left jab, we've talked about how important that is, the important weapon in boxing. Now, what you want to do in these early rounds like this of a title fight is you want to control the fight without letting it get too far out of your hands.
Right hand by Toney, trying to keep McCallum honest at the end of round one.
Here is a look at that low blow from the opening round. Look how low McCallum is bending down. Toney coming up over the top of McCallum. Really wasn't anybody's fault that punch was low.
Into the corner of James Toney in his third defense of the IBF middleweight championship. The former WBA middleweight champion is Mike McCallum. He gave up that title, passing up on a mandatory defense against Steve Collins, when the McCallum people were asked to ante up a $50,000 sanctioning fee. So he goes into this fight now looking for his third world championship, trying to take the IBF crown away from James Toney. It's Toney in the white and McCallum in the dark trunks.
And look at these angles that James Toney is using. He is a fighter who has really learned to work the angles. He's a smart thinking fighter inside those ropes. You don't find too many of those today. That's why he's the middleweight champion in the world.
Sean, Toney feels that he can walk through McCallum.
You know, both of them feel that way. This has really been a war of words and a battle outside the ropes leading up to this match.
But you take a look at Toney's fights against Michael Nunn, and now they open it up.
Oh, right hands from Toney over the top of those right hands. See how McCallum carries that left hand a little bit low? James Toney just going right over the top of it. Again, the overhand right.
And slipping in the left was McCallum. Toney with the big knockout over Michael Nunn after he was behind in the cards. Also came back late against Reggie Johnson. And Toney feels that he has the knockout power to take out McCallum, even though McCallum may box and score some points early. And now McCallum turns Toney around, using that ploy to score a right.
At the end of the 8th round in that Michael Nunn fight, where James Toney really came out, he really bloomed in that match. After that round, he came back to his corner and he told his trainer, Greg Owens, he said, I know I can knock Michael Nunn out. He did in the 11th round.
We're in the second round. It is Toney, the champion, and McCallum, actually, technically in this fight, the challenger, because he's going after Toney's crown.
And McCallum is fighting back. But look at these combinations from Toney. The 1-2 is working. McCallum is swinging for those one shots.
And they are heating it up with a minute to go in the second round.
Good shoulder work by James Toney.
And a smile from Toney. Perhaps he's picking up some of McCallum's tricks very quickly. A very fast learner in James Toney. Inside the final minute, coming down to 30 seconds to go in the second round. Toney, for the moment, had McCallum in the corner, but this fight so far through 2 rounds has been right there in the center of the ring.
And what a different picture this round is from the first. Remember all those left jabs these two were landing in the first? Now they're trying to belt each other out.
The feeling out process ended after the first 3 minutes. Toney just standing in front of McCallum. McCallum with the movement. And then McCallum goes down, but Steve Smoger waves it off. He says it is a slip, although it appeared there may have been a punch that sent McCallum down. McCallum has never been down in a fight. And Smoger says after that one he still has never been down. They have called that a slip, Sean.
You know, Al, the rule is any part of your body that touches the mat other than the soles of your feet, it is ruled a knockdown from a legal blow. That's what I saw. He got hit with, look for the left hook and the right hand. Here comes the left hook. Bing, now watch for the right hand. Down goes McCallum right there. That should have been ruled a knockdown.
So the two fighters get ready for the third round. McCallum goes down to the canvas, but it's recorded as a slip. But what's going on in the mind of James Toney and McCallum, perhaps psychologically, of seeing McCallum on the canvas? Remember, he's never been down before.
You know, it's a psychological advantage if you can get your opponent down on that canvas looking up to you. And that's what happened in the third round, in the second round. But I think, though, earlier in that second, the control was established. James Toney was hitting the mark. He was setting the heavier punches. McCallum was just swinging. He's biding his time now, waiting until the later rounds. He is a fighter who likes to come on stronger later in a fight. Slow starter is Mike McCallum.
The worst McCallum has ever been wobbled in his fight with Donald Curry in one of his defenses, but McCallum came back and beat Curry in that fight. As a matter of fact, took him out in round number 5. This is the third round. McCallum in the dark trunks, and it is Toney in the white trunks. Pretty good pace, Sean, so far here into the third round.
It's been a busy pace, and you can also see the concentration level of these two fighters. Both of them figuring out their fight plan and trying to figure out what their opponent's doing. What will work to counter what their opponent's doing, too. Look at the jabs in this round from McCallum. Good right hand from Mike McCallum. Trying to time Toney running in with that left hand low.
Toney likes to use the right, and as Sean has pointed out, McCallum with a tendency of keeping that left low.
Well, Toney has been successful with landing the right hand over the top following that jab back, but now McCallum is carrying the hand higher. You really see the complexion of the fight change. You can see these two world-class fighters changing their style. Oh, that's what happens when you get to another level of boxing. Up to the world-class level, you can change. Good right hand by Toney. The battle for control still in these early rounds, going back and forth.
Inside a minute to go in the third. Biggest victory in the career of James Toney. Landed him the IBF middleweight title when he, in shocking fashion, knocked out Michael Nunn in the 11th round. But he goes up against a fighter who's won 2 world championships as a junior middleweight and a middleweight, and has knocked out the likes of Julian Jackson and Donald Curry and Milton McCrory and Michael Watson. The only loss on the ledger of McCallum came 4 years ago to Sambu Kalambe, and earlier this season McCallum able to avenge his lone defeat.
All right.
Round number 4, the IBF middleweight champion James Toney puts that crown on the line against 2-time world champion Mike McCallum. We beginning round number 4, and Toney comes out with a nice combination. These two fighters, Sean, have stayed right there in the middle of the ring for this entire fight. Heading now into the 4th round. Another big right by Toney.
And he has been so successful with that right over the top. He lifts the elbow up to turn it over. What you want to do when you're throwing those punches is knock your opponent down to the canvas, so you throw your punches down. You're turning your elbow over like Toney does. You can do that.
Sean, Toney going up against the consummate professional in Mike McCallum. What is Toney looking for?
Well, he's still learning, and he's a fighter that can change from round to round. In fact, both of these fighters are. I think now what he's concentrating on is getting back to his game plan. He lost the left jab in the last round. Now he's trying to pick it up again. And get that left jab to work, and everything else is going to come.
Here in the 4th, Sean, Toney seems to be the man stalking. It's that right that keeps McCallum at bay.
He is, but look how the hands of James Toney have come down. That left hand way down by his waist like McCallum's has been. Now McCallum is a terrific left jabber, but if he could sneak in some overhand rights, he would land on Toney. Oh, look at the control from that jab. This is a real lesson in how to use a left jab.
Chess match developing between these two middleweights. Toney there uses the jab. McCallum has 34 knockouts. Toney has 20. And a combination again tried by Toney. Flailing away. McCallum trying to turn Toney around.
McCallum trying to use the angles, and watch Mike McCallum also.
Right by McCallum. He comes back, and now Toney delivers with a combination.
The right hands are what is doing the damage. The left jabs are setting him up. But watch both of them roll with the punch. They roll away from the right hand, rocking back on their back leg. They reset that foot and try to throw a retaliation right. Another good right, good movement to the angles for McCallum.
30 seconds to go in this rock'em sock'em fourth round.
McCallum has stayed more flat-footed in this round than he had in the third round.
A little bit of a breather here for the last few seconds. Now the final seconds of round 4. Now Toney up against the ropes for the first time in this fight. And both look exhausted after wall-to-wall action of 3 minutes in round number 4.
Good round, but the hands of James Toney came down in that fourth round. They have got to be concerned over that. The left hand dragging down by his waist. Breathing heavy in his corner. Greg Owen, Bill Miller, concerned. Good round for both of these fighters. But look how McCallum rocks on that back leg, tries to pull the power away from the punches, then comes back wisely. James Toney, also a fighter who can come back, changing from round to round.
Round number 5. These two fighters enter the ring after the best round of the fight. Back and forth round number 4. Difficult round to score. Both fighters looking very good at different times in the round.
I gave the last round out to James Toney, the champion, but I could have easily given it to Mike McCallum. I think the fourth round and the third round were both so very close they could have gone either way.
Remember, Toney in winning the championship against Nunn, and then in his first defense in a very hotly contested fight against Reggie Johnson, it was Toney who came on in the latter stages in those fights to win. And I think, Sean, in this fight, he's determined not to give away too much in the early stages of the fight.
Well, in that Reggie Johnson fight, he also was cut over the left eye. That's because he's dragging James Toney's dragging that left hand. Look where that left hand is now. Right hand not way up there. Good right hand by Toney. Wisely, he sets that right hand up with the left jab. Good combination, basic fundamental boxing.
A furious pace is developing. We're only in the 5th round. It is scheduled for 12. McCallum, of course, with the much more experience going into the later rounds, and even at the age of 35, certainly prides himself on being a pro and being in top flight condition in each and every fight. And we have seen Toney in the past. He's always been in condition.
Well, Mike McCallum, it always comes in good shape and always comes in with a battle plan. But this fight, I'm really surprised. He is known as the body snatcher. That tells me great body puncher, and we've seen him in the past where he was. He is not in this fight. He has not launched a body attack at all. He's concentrating on the head. But, you know, that's also what James Toney is doing. Concentrating upstairs. Now, Toney is boxing right straight ahead, running right straight ahead forward. What McCallum is trying to do is work the angles. Watch his movement from side to side, and then he scores. Here he is trying to work the angles. Look at McCallum trying to get on the sides. realizing that James Toney knows only one direction, right straight ahead and right straight backwards, he's trying to get on the sides of him.
And it's Toney again, sets up in the center of the ring. He has been the aggressor in this round.
And one thing Toney might try to do is slide over, cut the ring off, keep McCallum from moving sideways. Here, every time he's trying to throw a right hand, he has to reset. If he could slide over, he would corner up McCallum, then he could land his punches.
No. Okay. All right.
Round number 6. You are watching the IBF Middleweight Championship. The champion in the white trunks, James Toney, comes in with a record of 28-0-1 with 20 knockouts, making his 3rd title defense against the veteran Mike McCallum, who's given up his WBA middleweight title to step in the ring here against Toney. The vet has won 42 of his 43 fights and 34 by knockout. McCallum, a 5-2 favorite coming into this fight. 6th round action, and is scheduled for 12. It's Toney looking for the setup on the big right hand. McCallum doing what we expected, Sean. The technician in the ring, looking for that jab to set himself up, moving, giving angles to James Toney.
When I asked James Toney to describe himself as a boxer, he says, a good boxer, but the best thing that I have is patience and great concentration. And you can see both of those here in this 6th round. He has been fighting a long time, actually 10 years inside the ring, but he got into boxing because he got into a lot of street fights. In fact, 7 times he was expelled from school for street fighting. So that's why he's able to learn so much inside the ropes. Learn and change from round to round. Good left hook by McCallum.
Oh, and a right hand by Toney. And Toney flailing away with a combination. McCallum standing up strong to those punches, demonstrating the good chin that has taken many before James Toney. But Toney's right hand, Sean, now serving not as only good offense but good defense, because that right is keeping McCallum off balance.
He's fending those punches off too with that right hand because the left hand is down so low. He's good at putting the 1-2 combination together. If he could connect with a hook after the right hand, he'd put McCallum down the canvas.
6th round action, a real crisp pace to this point, and very even, it seems, at this point, Sean, inside the final 30 of round 6.
I've got Toney a little bit ahead in this fight, but some of these rounds that I've got him ahead in, they could have gone either way. This is a very close fight. Good body punches, finally, from Mike McCallum.
The IBF Middleweight Championship on USA's Tuesday Night Fights.
Don't drop your left hand.
6 rounds down in a scheduled 12-rounder for the IBF Middleweight Championship. The champion in the white, 24-year-old James Toney, and the challenger, the former WBA middleweight champ, who just gave up his title, passing a mandatory defense against Steve Collins, is Mike McCallum, the 35-year-old from Jamaica, national hero. He lives now in Brooklyn, New York, going up against a Michigan hero and James Toney.
And see what McCallum is doing now. He's jabbing at the top of the chest because he's missing with a lot of these jabs. He's going down a little bit lower than the chin, hoping that Toney will run into it.
Tony out of Ann Arbor was a great high school quarterback. A matter of fact, had a scholarship offer at Weston, Michigan, but then hurt his knee and just felt football would be a little bit too demanding for the knee and concentrated on boxing. Good decision for James Toney, who is now a middleweight champion.
He also broke his right ankle, Al, some years back, right before he turned professional.
But he's put it all together, and he's looking more and more impressive as a professional. His big weapon in this hand has been the right. Marvin Hagler, the legendary middleweight champion, ringside at this fight. And there have been reminders of Marvin Hagler when you take a look at James Toney. And even Hagler said that Toney has the fire and intensity that reminds me of myself.
Good combinations. Well, here is why. Look at James Toney gets hit. He rolls with the punches, and then he comes back to throw combinations of his own. Here he is taking some shots, and he throws back. And he is not afraid of any men and most animals. He'll get in there with anybody. Promoters say that James Toney is the easiest man to work with. He says, just put somebody in front of me.
And they put Mike McCallum in front of him tonight. Here in the 7th round, McCallum, Sean, staying right in front of Toney and backing him up against the ropes. This is a rarity. About the entire fight has been in the middle of the ring.
You know, he may be sensing to himself that he may be behind, or this fight is closer than he likes it. He's now trying to apply more pressure right at the end of the round to try to steal the eye of the judges.
Ooh, they may have butted heads.
They may have banged heads, and wisely McCallum slipped around behind Toney.
This is the beginning of round number 8, scheduled for 12. And at this point, anybody's fight. The champion in the white, James Toney, the challenger in the black trunks, Mike McCallum. Very close through 7 rounds. And this, Sean, is where you say Mike McCallum starts to put the heat on. Moving Toney into the later rounds. McCallum has gone 10 rounds or more on 13 occasions. Toney 7 times. Now, keep in mind, McCallum has gone 12 or more on 7 occasions. And this one is scheduled for 12 rounds. Toney has gone 12 just once before, or twice before. The last time, Reggie Johnson in his first offense.
But he knocked out Michael Nunn to win this championship in the 11th round. It was, of course, after 10. Now, in that last round, Mike McCallum in that 7th picked up the heat right toward the end, putting more pressure, realizing that, hey, he needs to try to win this fight impressively.
Is there a reassessment going on in the corners or for each of these fighters now that they've gotten 7 strong rounds behind them?
Absolutely. Now they're so far in. Whoa, good right hand by Toney. McCallum is stunned by that right hand. Both fight, but see, here's an example of Toney, a great fighter who only throws the one punch. He's got a terrific right hand. If he could put the right hand together with a good left hook, he'd knock McCallum out.
There's a good right hand.
Again, another right hand that's very effective. Devastating right hand, but he can't knock him out. What you many times have to do is put your opponent to sleep with one punch, put him down with the other. Very difficult to knock out a fighter with one punch, unless you're somebody like a Tommy Hearns, or even marvelous Marvin Hagler. Good combination there by Toney.
Toney, the aggressor, but McCallum hangs right in front of him, and again pinning Toney up against the ropes.
Al, back to your question. By the 8th round, all the introductions have gone. You're into the fight, and as professionals, you realize where you are in the fight, how the scoring is pretty much close to what they're seeing, how the scoring is going. You make your own assessment. Now, many times, you have to rely on your trainers and your handlers to reinforce that.
You think James Toney is reassessed now, understands that he might not be able to walk right through Mike McCallum, which he indicated before this fight.
Yes, but he has got so much confidence in himself that I'm sure he has no worries at all inside those ropes. He feels as though he's way ahead in this match.
8 rounds down in the scheduled 12-round World Championship fight. Round number 9. for the middleweight championship of the world, IBF version. Callum starting again close up against Toney. Figures that may be one way to take away the right hand power, trying to smother the punches, and the two trading to start off round number 9.
And now he's putting on more pressure. Later in the fight is when he comes on, as I have mentioned before. But it's easier to hurt your opponent and even knock your opponent out if he's moving forward to you. In the last few rounds, he has moved forward to James Toney and right into that overhand right power.
42 victories for McCallum, 34 by knockout. Now, on one side, McCallum, of course, the veteran who's gone many more distance fights. But Toney also feels he's got the young legs going up against a guy 35 years old, who at this point in his career, although he prides himself on conditioning, could be a little weary in the closing rounds.
But you know, you talk about those great legs of Toney. He really has not used them in this fight. He has stood flat-footed and beat Mike McCallum on the inside. He's beat him to the punch. Landing with that overhand right on many times.
Ooh, right hand by McCallum, and he doubles up on the left.
Big right hand by Mike, and look who fights back.
And McCallum scoring upstairs. The body snatcher goes upstairs.
Well, that's what Mike McCallum needs. He needs to turn this fight around.
And now the jab by McCallum, moving Toney back. It's McCallum positioning Toney towards the ropes.
But Toney is so hard to hit. Look at him roll around with these punches. He's bending over at the waist, but he's pulling back. Watch him rolls from his shoulders.
Sean,
trying to pull the power out of the punches.
Toney looks a little tired here in the night.
He does. And look at him standing straight up from his legs up, but he's bending over at the waist. Signs of a tired fighter.
McCallum also using his head, his shoulders, trying to pin Toney on the ropes. Toney's hands are dangerously low.
Well, that's why you see so much head movement now from Toney. His hands are so low, he has no protection.
Toney's mouth also is open. It's as if he's
the mouthpiece of McCallum almost flying out. Good left hook by James Toney.
Good round for Mike McCallum, the 9th round. Tenth round action. Mike McCallum coming off his best round of the fight. And so in response, James Toney comes out winging here in the 10th.
Sometimes you just got to plant your feet and fight, and that's what James Toney has done. Look how flat-footed Toney is, and he's landing with that overhand right. Once he gets in trouble, he goes back to that overhand right.
And a flurry by Toney to start the 10th round. Toney now chasing and backing McCallum up. It was reversed in the 9th round. McCallum won the WBA middleweight crown in 12 rounds, and in his 3 defenses, 2 of them were 12 rounds and the other 11. And Sean, you had commented between rounds that you thought that McCallum's best round was the 9th, and he was most alive in that round in any of the fights, and that maybe he's now just getting into feeling the way he wants to feel in a fight.
Well, you know, he comes on later in a fight, and he finally got things opened up and going his way in the end of that 9th round. But James Toney came out at the first of this, the 10th round, realizing that he had to beat McCallum off of him, and he did. That is the sign of a true champion. You know, sometimes you have no place to hide. The best thing you can do is just get out there and get with it. Now, and it's all about control. A fight, it's all about control. Can you impose your will on your opponent? And that's what James Toney has done.
James Toney, of course, who came up with a dramatic knockout of Michael Nunn in the 11th round after being behind to win the title. Also went to 12 rounds to make his first defense against Reggie Johnson. 2 mobile fighters, as is his opponent here tonight in McCallum.
You know, in that fight with Michael Nunn, after the match, I mean, nobody knew who James Toney was. After the match, the reporters at ringside asked for some biographical information on James Toney.
But Toney, Sean, here may feel, and another big right by Toney, they feel that once again he's in position where he has to come on strong in the closing rounds to retain his championship. But right now here in the 10th, Sean O'Grady has James Toney in front.
I've got Toney comfortably ahead at 5-2-2. I've scored this.
And there goes the mouthpiece of Mike McCallum.
And that's another important factor. You knock your opponent's mouthpiece out. The judges see that. They say, hey, he's hitting harder. And Toney is hitting harder.
Certainly looks like it. And the timeout rule, a break in the action, and Smoger getting the mouthpiece back into the mouth of Mike McCallum. And you could see Toney really teeing off upstairs as soon as McCallum lost the mouthpiece. And he's still teeing off upstairs.
Planting his feet and digging with that right hand, setting up with the left jab. Good punches, toe-to-toe.
Some solid shots by James Toney. After a big 9th round by McCallum, Toney comes back here in the 10th. 24-year-old James Toney and the 35-year-old, 35 plus, Mike McCallum. He's admitting to 35. And Toney hears it in his corner. And Sean, good rebounding round for Toney in the 10th.
Well, Toney has been the one throughout this match landing the heavier shots. We're going to get a look at these heavier shots that he's landing. The left hand low, boom, staggering the legs of Mike McCallum over the top of that right hand. Again over the top with that right hand. Watch Toney turn this right hand over. Good combinations. Now you see Toney putting those combinations together, coming back with that left hook that we talked about earlier. More action from that 10th round. The good combination there is the left hook that's been missing from James Toney's arsenal. And the combinations back and forth, working each side.
10 rounds down, we go to the 11th. It appears, Sean, as if McCallum has landed the most punches in the fight, but Toney has landed the heavier punches.
Well, the judges are looking for 4 things. They're looking for effective aggressiveness, ring generalship, defense, and clean punches. Those clean, hard punches have all come from James Toney.
No knockdowns in the fight. There was a slip in the second. McCallum going down late in the second round, but referee Steve Smoger termed that a slip.
There's also an old adage in boxing, Al, that the challenger must take a title away from the champion. He's got to beat him convincingly enough that he takes his title away from him. And Mike McCallum doesn't appear to be doing that. You know, I talked about the control. Look at the mental focus of these two now as compared to earlier in the fight. Now it appears that McCallum is just struggling for his punches, whereas Toney has a lot of confidence and he's placing those punches right where he wants them.
A lot of action through 10 rounds, and here we are in the 11th. The stamina may be the key. Matter of fact, before the fight, Bill Miller, working in the corner of James Toney, said Toney has more petrol in his tank, and that will be the difference. But for his age, Mike McCallum certainly demonstrates a great stamina and endurance.
And still bouncing here in this 11th round. A lot of energy, a lot of enthusiasm. Looks like a young man, really, Mike McCallum. But, you know, you look at how wise, clever James Toney is. He is staying flat-footed. The man doing the most work is McCallum with all the bouncing that he's doing. It's a wise way to fight. You can get a long career if you sit still, you plant your feet, and you can punch harder.
Although McCallum at this point certainly knows how much he could bounce through 12 rounds. Well tested in that area. Inside the final minute of round number 11. It has been a furious fight to this point. The champion, James Toney. The challenger, Mike McCallum, who gave up the WBA middleweight crown and entered into this fight. It was originally supposed to be a unification, but McCallum had to give up the WBA title when he passed on a mandatory defense against Steve Collins. But he knows that and feels that this is where the middleweight championship is, between he and James Toney. Toney takes a long look, drops his hands, a big breather, and they now will brace for the final 3 minutes of this fight.
Action from the 11th round. Watch for the left hook following the right hand by James Toney. Here at the end of the last round, Mike McCallum started putting more pressure, trying to steal the eye of the judges.
Ladies and gentlemen,
They call him the body snatcher, but he certainly has not built up much of a body attack in this fight. It's been mostly James Toney.
James Toney's shots, he just missed a big right at the end of the 11th round. Still looks to have that strength. Talk about second wind in a fight. I think there have been 5 or 6 wins by now with these two fighters. Just a furious pace here into the 12th round. And here, Sean, will see the resolve and the inner strength of a champion. Both the champions going for this title now in the 12th and final round.
And it is James Toney's championship that they're going for. The IBF middleweight title of the world. The overhand right from Toney still working in this round. The punches have slowed, but they will increase later on in this round.
Do you
vary the intensity on those punches. Get your opponent used to those light shots, then you can hit him with the big shots.
What do you think the mindset of each fighter is coming into this round? Do you think Toney feels he's up and McCallum feels he's up?
I think they both think that they're ahead. They both believe in their own mind they're ahead, but they're also saying, hey, I've got to finish strong. I've got to finish big. Both of them are professionals.
Well, McCallum had his best round, I think, in the 9th, but since that time, Toney has come on in the 10th and the 11th round, looking the stronger of the two fighters. Sean, what's your card say coming into this final round?
I have got it scored 6.
Oh, there's a left by Toney. Toney looking to finish big, looking to finish off McCallum. Is McCallum in trouble here in the 12th? The crowd is responding, and McCallum is holding on. James Toney showing that he has a lot left. And McCallum's arms drifting downward. Toney with the big right looking to score. McCallum appears to be defenseless upstairs.
This has been really the big question mark for James Toney. Could he survive in those later rounds when Mike McCallum was coming on strong? And I think he certainly answered that question. Good finish for the champion James Toney.
And slow lefts by McCallum. I think it has caught up here, certainly with McCallum. Toney unable to put McCallum away. They have summoned up the last bit of energy in a frantic 12 rounds. McCallum now keeping his distance. Toney trying to reset. The crowd responding. This is the 12th and final round.
Al, you asked me how I had it scored. I've got it 6-2-3 for James Toney, but there was the 3rd, 4th, 5th rounds that easily could have gone either way. But I think James Toney looks like he has retained his title.
A flurry by Toney to finish the fight. James Toney wobbles away, finishing in dramatic fashion. He has to feel if this fight went another 10-15 seconds, he would have KO'd Mike McCallum. McCallum ends standing. Toney ends swinging. And this one now goes to the cards. We'll be back with a decision in just a moment. And taking a look at the closing seconds of the fight, Toney coming on strong against McCallum.
And a good professional tries to steal those last few seconds to try to impress the judges. Here is Toney landing at will with big combinations. When Mike McCallum is able to score, he is only scoring with single shots. But here, James Toney is very impressive.
Pouring it on down the stretch, and it was the conclusion that possibly saved Toney in this fight. Now we are ready for the official decision.
Here is the official scoring. Gary Merritt scores the bout 116-112. He has it for James Toney. Tommy Kazmarek scores the bout 115-113 for Mike McCallum. Robert Cox scores the bout 114 to 114. It's a three-way split. Ladies and gentlemen, the bout is a draw. Let's hear it for both of these great fighters here tonight.
James Toney retains the IBF middleweight crown. Sean, you agree with the decision?
Well, I thought that Toney did enough to win the fight, and as the champion, you know, they say you're supposed to take the title away from the champion. I don't think Mike McCallum did that.
Did enough to win the fight. 116, 112, one of the judges had it for Toney. Did you see it around that count?
That's about where I would see it. I thought Toney had complete control, and as the champion, he's got that other factor there.
What would a rematch look like?
I think a rematch, and they always don't live up to their expectations. I think in a rematch, I think Toney really runs away with it. Mike McCallum's a wonderful fighter, but I think James Toney had his number that night, and we'll have it from now on.
All right, and that's it for tonight on USA's Tuesday Night Fights. A reminder, next week only, we switch to Thursday night, and we'll find the Ruelas brothers awaiting in Los Angeles. The Holiday Inn Livonia West is conveniently located at I-275 and 6 Mile Road, easily accessible to all major highways in the Detroit metropolitan area. And cars provided by Budget Rent-A-Car. The smart money is on budget. For the champ, Sean O'Grady, this is Al Albert. Thanks for joining us, and we'll see you next week.